Welcome into New York Giants Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Marshall Green, and we have a loaded show for you all today. We're going to get to the latest on Kadarius Toney not being at voluntary minicamps, and James Bradberry. Could the Giants just cut him because they can't find a trade partner? And Joe Schoen, he had a press conference. I'm going to give you my biggest takeaways from it. But first on the plate, the Giants, they made a move in free agency. And yes, it's another one-year deal for a veteran minimum contract, and that's Jordan Akins, the tight end. He played for the Houston Texans the past couple of years. And Aaron Wilson, he broke the news on Twitter. He said the former Texans tight end Jordan Akins joins the New York Giants on a one-year deal per league source. He's singing the song we've heard all offseason long. The Giants, they signed a one-year player for a veteran minimum contract. Pretty much everybody besides Mark Lewinsky, the Giants have signed to a one-year deal for a veteran minimum contract. So I want you to get in the comments section and let me know, what was your one-word reaction to the Jordan Akins signing? Did you see it on Twitter? Is this the way you're finding out about the news? I want to let you all to have a chance to get in the comment section, be a part of today's show, and let me know what's your one-word reaction to the Giants signing tight end Jordan Akins. A little more background on Akins. He's a 30-year-old tight end who spent the last 4 years with the Houston Texans. He started 3 games last year, but he does have 23 career starts, and he's a former third-round pick from the 2018 NFL draft. And yes, you read that right. He was drafted in 2018, and he's already 30 years old. When he was drafted, he was kind of drafted as a guy that had some high upside, what was somewhat of a project and needed some reps to become a better football player. But he entered the NFL at 26 years old, and now he's 30 years old. He's had an okay career, I guess. His best season was in 2019 when he had 36 grabs for 418 yards and 2 touchdowns. Last year, 24 grabs, 214 yards, 9 yards a catch, no touchdowns. He's a serviceable tight end. He's going to compete in the tight end room for the Giants. That, I guess you could say, lacks a little bit of talent. Ricky Seals-Jones, he's currently their tight end number 1. I think Jordan Akins easily slides in as tight end 2. Then you got Jake Houseman at tight end 3. Then Chris Miriak, tight end 4, the preseason legend. He had one of the only touchdowns for the Giants in the preseason last year. And then Ryson John, the athletic tight end who was on the practice squad for most of the season last year. So looking at that room, 5 guys who really haven't proved much in the NFL. I like Ricky Seals-Jones a lot. I think he's a good tight end 2, maybe a tight end 3. I don't really like him as a tight end 1. But let me know, what round do you think the Giants should draft a tight end in coming up in a week in the NFL draft? Kadarius Toney was not at voluntary offseason workouts a couple weeks ago, and it was kind of a problem then. I thought, if you're not going to be there on the first day of school when you got a new boss and a new head coach, that's a problem. But now the pads are on, the Giants are practicing, and voluntary minicamp started this week, and once again, Kadarius Toney is MIA. Last year, he didn't attend voluntary offseason workouts either because he didn't have his contract signed. So this may be a thing that continues to roll every single year for Kadarius Toney. Do I think it's a big deal? No. But do I see it as a problem? Yes, we'll continue to break that down in a second. I just don't think it's a good look with a new staff in place. You got a new head coach. You got a new GM. You had a lackluster rookie year, and you're not showing up to digest the playbook. The fact is, he hasn't even gotten the playbook because the Giants, they're not doing anything over Zoom anymore, and they're not going to hand out playbooks electronically. So Brian Daboll, he was asked about Kadarius Toney at voluntary minicamp today, and this is what he had to say about Kadarius Toney. He said, KT, he's not here today. We have had a good attendance. Most everybody has been here. This is a voluntary camp. The guys that are here, we're going to work with. The guys that aren't going to miss out on, the guys that are going to miss out on some things. I've had good talks with KT. I like the fact that Kadarius Toney has at least talked with Brian Daboll, even though he hasn't been present for voluntary workouts or minicamp. The fact that you're not at least going to be there, I think it's a good thing that you've either reached out or Brian Daboll has reached out to him. But I have a whole lot of thoughts on Toney not being there. And I tweeted this out back on April 5th when he first wasn't at voluntary workouts. And I said, Kadarius Toney not going to voluntary workouts doesn't help him or the Giants. That's all that matters. The Giants have been the laughingstock of the league for 5 years now. Having your first-round pick no-show the first day with a new head coach and GM is worrisome. And my stance hasn't changed at all about that. Kadarius Toney is not only hurting himself by not going to these workouts and minicamp, he's also hurting the New York Football Giants. The Giants, they've had one of the worst receiving corps for the past couple of years in the NFL. You just spent a first-round pick on a guy, and he doesn't seem to be someone that's all the way bought in. And I have a problem with that. The Giants, they traded back and selected you in the first round. They had you on the field early on in the season when you didn't participate in off-season workouts last year. You didn't play in preseason. You weren't there for mini camp or training camp. And then I also said this, because some people responded and said, Marshall, would you even go to work if it was voluntary? If they didn't make you go, would you go? And this was my tweet then. And yes, if my job held a voluntary workshop with a new CEO and a new COO in place that is designed to help me to get to know my new coworkers and bosses while benefiting me to do my job better and to make more money while helping the company be more successful, I'd be there. But that's just me. So I got a question for you guys. How do you feel about Kadarius Toney skipping out on voluntary mini camps? Are you mad? Are you sad? Do you think it's not a big deal? Is it a big deal? I think it is kind of a big deal. The fact you're not there working and building a better relationship with a guy like Daniel Jones, who you didn't get much offseason reps with last year. You didn't have much of a rapport on the field. It clearly showed that you weren't at your top ability to perform because you weren't able to score any touchdowns last year for the New York Giants. I do think it is a problem. Kadarius Toney needs to be on his best behavior and doing absolutely everything to help himself and the New York Football Giants. So let me know in the comments section, how do you feel about Kadarius Toney skipping out on minicamp? If Kadarius Toney last year had the type of production that Jamar Chase had, and he said, you know what, I'm cool, I don't want to come to voluntary workouts, I was just the best receiver in the NFL in my rookie year, I'd be cool with it. The thing is, the guy didn't score one touchdown last year. He had a troubling rookie year on and off the field. I mean, the guy, he had 39 grabs for 420 yards. Yeah, get your jokes in. It's 420. What a coincidence. Smoke one for your boy. But 57 targets, 39 receptions, 420 yards, and 0 touchdowns. I like Kadarius Toney. I'm not out on the guy. This is someone that I think is going to be an elite receiver in the National Football League. The thing is, he needs to be on the field. He needs the reps. This is someone that has all-pro talent, in my opinion. We saw it against the Dallas Cowboys when he had Mike Glennon at his quarterback spot, and he went for almost 200 yards. Mike Glennon just dropped back and said, you know what, F it, Kadarius Toney's down there somewhere, and it worked out more times than not. When he gets the ball in his hands, he's like a jitterbug. He is one of the best players in the NFL when it comes to yards after the catch. He continuously breaks tackles, and I like him a lot. I saw some things from him. He played well against the Cowboys. He played well against the New Orleans Saints. He had some big-time plays. But what have we heard before about Giants receivers in the past? Little things add up. One little thing, not a problem. Two little things, not a problem. But one after another, and now you're not showing up on the first day of school with a new teacher and a new principal. That's a problem, and I could see that not going over well with the new head brass in Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. And the Giants, they need Kadarius Toney to perform like a first-round pick, because when you look at this Giants wide receiver depth chart, it leaves a lot to be desired. Kenny Golladay, no touchdowns last year. Sterling Shepard, coming off an Achilles injury. Kadarius Toney, we already talked about him. Darius Slayton, he dropped the ball pretty much every single time he was targeted last year. There's not an elite wide receiver on this roster. Could they change that in the NFL draft? Could they take someone in the second round like Jahan Dotson? Yes. But you already spent a first-round pick on Kadarius Toney, and you need him to produce as soon as possible. And him not showing up, even though it's voluntary, is not a good look for the Giants or for him. So I want to ask you this question. I still believe in him. I'm going down and I'm typing in the comment section, why for yes, because I think he has the talent. I just question what he has in between his ears, and I'm not talking a headset. But let me know, do you still believe in Kadarius Toney? Go down and type Y for yes, or you can go down and type N for no. And if this is your first time watching a New York Giants Now video, make sure to subscribe, because we have free daily videos around the latest Giants news and rumors, and we're starting live shows like the one where this video first aired. And we're going to be going live for pick 5 and pick number 7 in the NFL draft. It's going to be a party way better than Mel Kiper and Todd McShay eating pumpkin pie. We're going to be throwing back shots, drinking some beers, having a good time. So join us. Hit that big red sub button. Help us get to 8,000 subscribers. Story number 2 on the show, and I saw this report a couple of days ago from Dan Duggan. He said, could the Giants Zach Rosenblatt, excuse me. He said, could the Giants look to cut James Bradberry? There hasn't been much trade chatter. He hasn't received many good picks in return. The report is the highest offer has been a 6th-round pick, and clearly the Giants, they value James Bradberry higher than a 6th-round pick, or they would have pulled the trigger on a trade like that. I think Bradberry can still be an elite number 1 corner in the National Football League. I would love for him to be a New York Giant. Joe Schoen had some things to say about that. We'll talk about that in a little bit later. But could the Giants just cut Bradberry if they're unable to get a trade done before the NFL draft or a draft day trade? The reason that he's most likely not going to be a Giant next year is because of that cap hit. And it's about at $21.8 million. And if you cut him prior to June 1st, you have a dead cap hit of $9.7 million. And to figure out how much savings you have, you take the cap hit minus the dead money. So 21.8 minus 9.7. But that doesn't equal 10.1. And that's because a couple of weeks ago, James Bradberry's contract became partially guaranteed, $2 million of it. So if they would have cut him prior to that deadline where his contract became partially guaranteed, they would have saved $12.1 million. But the fact that date has come and gone, now they can only save 10.1. But if they do trade him, they could save $12.1 million. If you think about what Bradberry was when he first came to the Giants, over from the Carolina Panthers, and Dave Gettleman gave him that 3-year contract, a lot of people, when that happened, weren't high on the deal. They thought it was a bad deal. They thought it was an overpay. But he came in and was one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL in 2020. Gave up just 4 touchdowns, allowed just 587 yards, had 3 interceptions, 18 pass breakups. But this year, his production slightly took a step back. He gave up 8 touchdowns, twice the amount he gave up the year prior. He gave up 850 yards. He had 4 interceptions and still 17 pass breakups, but he was targeted way more. In 2020, he was targeted 91 times. In 2021, 2022, he was targeted 115 times. He continually got targeted in man coverage. And why is this stat on screen? Because Don Wink Martindale is a man coverage defensive coordinator. He wants to run man coverage. He wants to bring the house. He wants to run zero blitz. He wants to have all these exotic schemes and different blitz packages, and you have to run man behind some of those most of the time, and James Bradberry does not excel in that spot. So even if the Giants were to keep him, he wouldn't be a great scheme fit in a man-to-man offense. He did it 22% of the time last year, allowed a 68% completion rate, and 127 passer rating when targeted in man coverage. The Giants' defensive back room right now, I still have James Bradberry in there, even though I don't think he's going to be on this team next year. He's your cornerback 1. Then you got a Dory Jackson at cornerback 2. And you don't really got much else. I like Robinson, the rookie. I think he made some good plays last year. He showed some promise. But he cannot be your number 1, 2. Rodarius Williams, he was good in training camp, but he got hurt early. The Giants, they need to target a cornerback in the NFL draft if they want to move on from a guy like James Bradberry. I like Adoree Jackson. He played better down the stretch of the season last year. He could slide in as your number 1, but I have concerns, injury concerns, if he can line up every single week and be that number 1 corner and follow number 1 wide receivers sideline to sideline. So what to do with James Bradberry? Should the Giants keep him, restructure, eat some money, sacrifice some cap next year? Joe Schoen said that's a possibility. We'll break that down in a second. Or should they just outright cut him? Go down, type K for keep, or you can go down and type C for cut. Cutting him would save $10.1 million. Last segment on the show today, Joe Schoen, he just had his pre-draft press conference. We're about a week away from the NFL draft, and he talked about a lot of different things. So here's some of my biggest takeaways on that press conference. He was asked about the number 5 and number 7 pick, and does he value need? The Giants, they need to go offensive line. He said, you know what? Throw need out the door. He believes in best player available, and he's talked about that throughout his tenure since he's taken over as the Giants general manager. Best player available. He said, we're trying to get 2 great football players at number 5 and number 7. Something I also thought that was really telling, he said we already have our top 7 guys ready on the draft board. So the Giants, they have their 7 guys. No matter how the draft falls out, they're going to get one of those guys at pick number 5 and pick number 7. This is a picture of Joe Schoen at its press conference. And then he talked about Charles Cross, the offensive tackle out of Mississippi State. He was asked about Cross, Neal, and Ekwonu, but he's really only singled out Charles Cross. And he said this, He's a really good player, really good feet. We like him. Is that Joe Schoen trying to up the stock of Charles Cross so someone takes him in the top 4 and Ekwonu or Neal falls the Giants are 5 at 7? Is he playing a little game of poker? We'll find out in a little over a week on NFL Draft Night. Another thing that I thought was really important about the press conference, he said we've gotten calls on both picks 5 and number 7. So they're entertaining at least the idea to trade down. If they trade down, I'd like to net a future first-round pick to make a move for a quarterback next year if Daniel Jones struggles. But he also said there's been no hard offer. Is he lying? Is it a smokescreen? Who knows? Things are always, they're not clear leading up until the NFL draft, but there is an idea, at least in his head, that they could trade down from picks 5 or 7. He also said this about James Bradberry. We're going to play it out and see how the draft goes. So maybe if they take Sauce Gardner at pick number 5, they're going to be more willing to trade a guy like James Bradberry. If they don't get Sauce, if they don't get Kyer Elam in the second round, if they don't get any of the cornerbacks that are mocked to go in the top 40, maybe they try to keep James Bradberry and eat some of that money. He also said this: there are contingency plans for him, being James Bradberry, to still be a New York Football Giant. And I think that's the best case scenario for the Giants. He's a great player. He had an all-pro type of year back in 2020. I don't think he's the best scheme fit for Wink Martindale, but the Giants aren't in a place necessarily just to be giving up good football players, and that's what James Bradberry is. And the last thing that I thought Joe Schoen was, honest about, and something that I liked a lot and heard a lot about him when he was at his time as Buffalo, and he worked with Brandon Beane, their general manager. He said character issues can take a guy off the board. And I like that. I'm tired of dealing with guys like DeAndre Baker and all of those guys the Giants have picked in the past that haven't worked off the field. But let me know, do you trust Joe Schoen to bring the Giants their 5th Super Bowl? Do you trust him to make the New York Football Giants great again? If you do, if you think Joe Schoen is the guy to hoist another Lombardi in the trophy case for the New York Giants, I want you to like this video. I mean, it's science. The more likes we get, the more likely it is that the Giants are going to win another Super Bowl. So like this video if you think Joe Schoen's the guy.